But thanks for doing this. I hope my, sort of brief description in the email made some sense, but we're just trying to partner with this local nonprofit that helps families that are like in the NICU presently in it, and then they have this longer term support community online. Our church won't really help with that because that's a private group of people who just get together and talk. Um, but we will help with the resources they need as they support families that are in the NICU. So I'm hoping through this interview and then another one with a couple who are some of our missionaries in Africa through Kingdom Workers and had triplets that were born very premature as well, to kind of combine these two interviews and give people a perspective. Do you know them? Is
Yeah,
it Terrell?
that is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Tracy Gray's sister, I think, or something like that, right?
Yeah, Liana is her name, I think. So I'll talk to her and her husband later this week.
Yeah.
This is an easier time gap to manage than
Yeah.
the Africa time gap.
Yeah.
And how old are you? Have two children?
Yeah. Ian is.
And how old are they now?
Ian's 21. He was our earliest baby. We just have two kids. He was born 27 weeks, so 3 months early. He was 2.2 pounds. Then Micah, he tried to come as early, but I was on bed rest for 3 months. 2 of those were in the hospital, and he was ending up being born 5 weeks early, and he was 5 pounds 13 ounces. He spent 2 weeks in the NICU. Ian, who was really early, he spent probably 2.5 months in the NICU. So we have our experiences in the hospital for sure.
Well, that's a remarkable thing to have gone through. I know God, and I know that he brings people closer to him during those times. So I suspect he did that for you guys. But let's talk about either experience, both experiences. I mean, there are probably differences between them that you're welcome to address. But if you're talking to some people who might volunteer to help families that are going through that, right, that are in their first week or their 8th week in the NICU, what are some of the things you'd want these families, these people who want to serve, who want to love well and love in an informed way, to know?
Mm-hmm. Do you want to? I know something I could say. Okay. Well, one thing, like for me, well, first of all, it's really daunting, probably overwhelming. It's everything in the NICU is a foreign thing. So the terminology is foreign and the equipment is foreign. And so that's a difficult thing to sort of navigate initially.
Okay.
The thing that it didn't really strike me initially, but as I was seeing people's reactions over time, it started to, I don't know, it's sort not offended me is not the right word, but it's sort of just struck me how people would react to the fact that our son was born 3 months early. So typically when somebody has a baby and they have a new baby who's just born, the reaction is, oh my goodness, congratulations, that's so great, it's wonderful. But when we would say, oh, our child's in the NICU, he's 3 months early, the reaction that we would get over and over was like, oh my goodness, oh, I'm so sorry, and it was not, we were so joyful to have this little baby, as little as he was, and he was such a great blessing to our marriage. He's our first child, and we wanted people to share that joy, but we almost had so many people have a reaction of almost horror.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's like, you know what? I think I turned to him one day and said, I just wish somebody would say congratulations. We're so proud of him. He's so cute, and no matter what, it's a challenging start, but it's a blessing no matter what. And we love him just as much as any other mom or dad loves their new baby. So I think that is one way that people can encourage them, is just recognize the blessing. And you can also recognize the challenges at the same time. So. That's one thing.
Sure.
Listening
But
That's
to
a pretty powerful observation.
mm,
listening to her talk just there made me recall a time too when he was out of the hospital and back home. You know, they wanted to keep an eye on him and his development, and of course, with every child, you have certain benchmarks and
Yep.
things. You know, you hear about percentiles all the time, and
Right.
I remember going to a checkup, and he wasn't picking up his head. You know, they'd work with him at home and put him on his belly and try to get him to
Mhm.
raise his head and things like that.
Absolutely.
And I remember them basically sounding. It was like 3 or 4 gals in this cramped room. They put a sheet on a linoleum floor and put, on a thin sheet, put him on the floor, and then it was just kind of like observed him and looked at him, with a critical eye. And I just remember them just feeling like they were being so critical. And I know
Okay.
she took it very personally. And my thinking all along is I don't care when you're born, how you're born, or what. God's in control, and you're going to develop however God wants you to. He doesn't follow our little timeline for benchmarks and things that we might think is, normal. So as much as you want to
Yeah,
think
sure.
it is normal, at the same time, what is normal? Every person is knit together and woven together and created so uniquely. And it's powerful to see God's plan at work.
It's as though you're suggesting that the Almighty is not governed by percentiles and averages. Yeah, sure. No, that's a great perspective, and I think really applicable. Like to take it a step further for people, for the church, like people who are part of a congregation who have a heart that's moved to love and serve these families that are in the NICU are not medical professionals most of the time, don't need to worry about being medical professionals. Like God has given us medical professionals who are smart people who are going to help us with what they're going to help us with. But we are people who love to celebrate the existence of a person that God loves, and to celebrate their life and birth. So we can bring that to the table in a way that maybe a medical professional wouldn't, and maybe others wouldn't. No, that's
Mhm.
great. What else comes to mind? Maybe on the other side, you gave an example of like this was a thing that was daunting. The sort of looks of horror almost, or at some of the things about your son and his size and his development and all that. What were some of the most encouraging things that stuck out through those weeks and those times in the NICU?
Encouraging from other people or things that we
Yeah.
would, um, well, we had a very supportive church family. Some of them just took us under the wing. I mean, before we even had kids, but they were like family to us. And I think just knowing people were praying for us was very encouraging. And just looking back, like even from week to week, we could see prayers being answered on a regular basis. And so just knowing people are praying for us and knowing the specific things that if we were asking for a certain thing that we would like them to pray us for, and seeing those things happen by God's grace, it shows you the power of prayer. So I think that
Yeah.
was obviously one of the main things that's encouraging to us. You think?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. They didn't hesitate to ask how we were doing, to to bring it up. Like she said before, it's easy in any situation, whether somebody has an accident or a situation like this, or when somebody dies, everybody kind of doesn't know how to respond maybe, and we act differently or awkwardly. And
Yeah.
we appreciated anybody that just showed that they cared and
Mhm.
asked.
Mhm.
Yeah, and maybe we can even give permission. Like, it's okay to not really know how to respond in this situation. Like, we're talking about people who have not spent time in the NICU or dealt with a cancer diagnosis or lost a loved one in this way, whatever example we're using. But don't let that fear become inaction or drive at what you said, hesitation, to ask, to try
Yeah, I
people.
think people might be nervous, like, oh, I don't want to butt in or be nosy. But I think the parents probably want to talk about it. And if they don't, they won't share what they don't want to share. But I think it's good to know that people care enough to ask. So I think that's helpful.
And in doing that, they, by asking, are probably just, they're giving the control over that conversation to you guys or to whomever, instead of maintaining control over it themselves, um, which is empowering.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, that's
probably
really interesting.
another thing would be, it's like anything, when you hear like somebody who has a death in the family or whatever, it's really hard for people to ask for help. So it was probably the same. We were probably the same way. But you always hear the advice that people give is, don't ask, how can I help? Because usually they're not going to say something. Just offer, say, I'm going to bring you a meal this week, which day works for you? Something like that, I think, is helpful.
They're not,
Yeah.
they're not necessarily thinking everything through, depending on how immediate this person's being approached.
Mm.
Right.
You don't understand how much time they're going to. This is like, again, like a cancer treatment or any other health crisis that a family might have. They have unforeseen, gas expenses or meal planning. Some of the things that we take for granted. That home maintenance. If you have a lawn to mow or something like that, because you're not going to be home. You're going to spend as much time in the hospital as you can.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, and that's, to all of the people who maybe don't feel confident writing a card or don't feel confident like giving an encouraging word or something like that, where your skills are elsewhere, like that home maintenance piece is really important. Like your vocation, whatever God has given you, there's a way for you to serve these families, um, in this time. That's really a great observation. Thank you.
Mhm.
That will help people. Um, what else? One thing I'm thinking about is 21 years ago, right? Was when your son Ian, right, was born.
Mhm.
You guys are different people now than you were 21 years ago, um, and often people are younger when they're going through this. Looking back, if you guys now could minister to yourselves then, what would you maybe do?
Do for us or say?
Yeah, do or say or whatever. How would you support the 21-year younger versions of yourselves if you met them today?
Mhm. Well, I tend to be more of a worrywart, I think, than anything, and for him, for sure. I think just, he's really good at reminding me, you know, you can see proof of God's faithfulness through our entire lives, and He has never let us down that way. And when you get caught up in a situation like where you're in the NICU or there's touch and go times with the health of the baby, then it's easy to just focus on that and worry about how it's going to turn out. But it's good to take a look at the big picture and be reminded of that. Of look at how God has been with you for the last 25 years of your life, and the difficulties that you have already experienced and how God led you through them. He's going to do the same thing. So I think that's a good reminder for me, always has been. And I need that back then and I need it now. So I think that's what my younger self needed at that time.
Uh, Find ways to say that, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And I think in my personal experience, I've had some family health crisis with cancer and stuff when I was young with my parents and things. And
Okay.
I sometimes wonder if the negative way to look at myself would be to say that I'm pessimistic or that I expect the worst, so that I'm not hurt, if that makes sense. I like to think of it as you know, when you're in a situation like this, you have no control. That was something that you're faced with right away. You can't control how well his body or her body is going to be processing oxygen, or if their heart valve is going to close properly, or you have no control, and the doctors really don't either. And so being willing and able to just submit to God's hand and his will and realize that he's brought you to this and he'll bring you through it. It's not an easy thing. I think it's probably even harder for mothers. I think my heart especially goes out to mothers, because I saw it in her that you must just go back over the pregnancy or whatever and just ask yourself, man, what did I do wrong? Or should I have done something differently? And there isn't. This was part of God's plan. And I'm reading a book right now called Man Up. And
Okay.
one of the key takeaways for me has been God's called me as a man in my particular station in life to be a husband and a father. And as such, it's my responsibility to protect and provide. And yet, before I can effectively do that, I have to acknowledge that I'm not in control and that my Heavenly Father is responsible for protecting and providing for me. And there's situations and circumstances in my life where I don't have control. I can't protect my kids when they go, drive anywhere in town, or they're beyond our reach. And so it's a humbling reminder that you're not in control, and that's okay. And that's good. The picture I carried with me the whole time that we were in the NICU is, you look at this tiny, tiny little child, whose hand is like the size of your thumb. And to me, it was just a powerful visual reminder that as small as he was to us, God's infinitely greater than, our entire planet. I just kept picturing God's hands and everything being in it. And I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Yeah, that's pretty great. It's almost like it's a good example of sort of leaning in. You're describing a situation in which the couple, the mother, the father, even the doctors lack control. It's impossible to pretend like you have control in this situation. There are other situations in life when you can pretend. You can pretend like you're killing it. You got it. And we do. But in this situation, it's impossible to pretend. So let's not pretend. Let's lean into the reality. That's always true, that we aren't the ones who are in control, yet we know the one who is. And he has made promises to us about his goodness and his love and his faithfulness. Well said. That's good. Thank you. I'm sure that this stuff is going to be helpful to people. You guys are doing great. Really appreciate it.
Like she said, people have gone through an experience. If they have a heart for helping other people, they want to talk about stuff like this. There might be people in your congregation that are in the same situation. So thank you for embracing the opportunity and seeking opportunities to empower people to serve.
And this is, sort of part of what we can do as a church is we can help one another develop strategies and be prepared, right? So this is equipping the saints for acts of service. This is helping them for whenever it does happen in their life that one of their 10 siblings has a premature child or whatever should occur, so that they have something to say and do in those situations. What are other, maybe just to make sure we're trying to cover the wide gamut of things, just really practical things? You've named some already, but really practical things that people did for you in that time, that just so that people can have their idea wheel start to turn. What comes to mind?
I have a couple. One is totally unexpected. Our congregation did we were both called workers at the time. So I don't know if that had something to do with it, but they did take a collection for us, and just to help with medical bills. That was very helpful. Went right to that because it piles up pretty quick. The other thing would be with when we had Micah, obviously now had a toddler at home. Ian was at home. And so that I could be with Micah, we had people who offered to watch Micah, just to babysit.
No, Ian.
No. Oh yeah,
Micah.
Ian, I'm sorry. Yeah, to watch Ian, to babysit while we're visiting the sibling in the hospital. So
Right.
that would be one for sure.
Or while I was at work,
Mhm.
Even when she was on bed rest before that,
Mhm.
for 2 months,
Mhm.
I'd take him to it. We had 2 friends of our congregation that they set up a plan for alternating when I could drop them off.
Mhm.
And I forgot about
Yeah.
that. We tend to focus on Ian
Mhm.
and then forget about how people helped us with Micah.
Mhm.
I think in many ways we needed more help because we already had another child at that time.
Mhm. Yeah. You think of anything else?
Mhm.
And I love that those 2 friends devised an actual strategy, right? Like, well, this is how we're going to get this done. We're going to divide and conquer, and we're going to make sure this is covered for your guys' sake. That's a big deal. When it comes to praying, you brought up praying earlier, and like you inferred that there was even you knew, and it was comforting to you to know that you had a core of people who were praying for you and being there for you. So somebody wants to pray for families that are in the NICU. What kinds of things might be on their list as they're praying? Help them to start to create an outline.
If I can throw this out there too.
Yeah.
I think it's easy. Like, again, I teach at a Lutheran high school, so we get to live our faith openly, and so I get people ask for prayer requests all the time, and I like that. I appreciate that. I like to pray immediately, but at the same time, if I make a request to somebody for a prayer, I'll share with them. I'll have a prayer for them to pray for me. So that might be helpful for some people. Like, oh, I want to pray, but I don't know what words to say or something like that. So thinking about this kind of thing ahead of time, I like to use the phrase be pre-prayed. If you can have a prayer in your pocket that applies to this specific situation, and obviously you can't have every detail in there, but it can be modified. That would be helpful for some people, I'm sure. Plus, I find it reassuring to think that, wow, there could be, who knows how many other people saying this prayer with me for this situation.
Yeah.
I'll let her address. What would you include in a prayer?
I would probably, ask somebody who wants to pray for somebody going through this experience would probably want to know what are our concerns for this week or for today that you would like me to pray about. So having a specific thing to pray for, like, oh, he's going to have heart surgery if this valve doesn't close, please pray that it closes on its own. That was one prayer that was answered for us amazingly.
Sure.
That happened so often. So specific prayers are important. And then also praying for the parents, I think, just to put their trust in God, to be at peace with God's plan. Parents need support too, just like the child does. I mean, it's easy to focus on the child and that's what the parents want, but the parents struggle too. It's real. So.
Yeah. And are more, emotionally developed and therefore need more emotional support in the midst of this. Like the child needs the physical in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. It's really helpful. One thing we might do coming out of the back end of this partnership at the end of the month is try to put together just a little, like even just a single page PDF, kind of like what to do if someone who's had a premature child. So would you guys be willing to, do you think at the end of the month you'd have time if I have that document, if I send it to you to review, to give a little feedback on that for us? Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Thank you. Are there other things This is going to get kind of cut up and revamped. I'll put similar questions from you guys and from the other couple together so that there's themes to it. Is there anything else that you want to have said here that we haven't covered so far?
Let me think.
For me, when I reflect back on it, and all the times that we had opportunity to do that kangaroo care and things like that, and when you're in that dark and for the most part fairly quiet space, and there's other, when you're in there as long as we were, you see parents, children who move on and new families come in, and now you have the experience. It's a tremendous witness opportunity, really, with nurses who work with you for weeks to months to other parents. So anything that people can do to, I'm assuming it's the same today, that you can kind of like tape things to your incubator and kind of basically it's your home away from home almost.
Yeah, sure.
If they let the parents spend time in there. So anything that they can do that, posting Bible passages that offer strength and encouragement, for them when they're there, but they're also there when other people come by. Having a hymnal with you or a photocopy of a hymn to just sing, lullabies are nice, but I remember singing all the time with Ian.
Yeah, interestingly, this just reminded me of when Ian was in the hospital. Our pastor would come visit, which, it's a great opportunity to witness right at the bedside. You have a pastor visiting, he's having a devotion with the family. And I remember he made a specific point because we had learned that one of the nurses who cared for Ian primarily was Mormon. And so he would specifically make prayers that were just talking about how, what was it like, God, like we will never be perfect, that sort of thing, gearing it towards the nurse, like the nurse was hearing this prayer. But I don't know, I think it's just a great way to witness at the bedside. Let your light shine. You never know what people are going to learn from you, in your experience.
Yeah, avoiding sarcasm as much as I'm able to. When you run towards where the pain is, you find that it's a lot easier to witness to people than when you run away from it, right? Like you're going to find a lot more evangelism opportunities in a hospital than while watching Netflix, period. Like that's just the way that it's going to be. So this is where it happens, where love comes true.
Yeah, another thought I just had, because if there's somebody we know who is having health struggles, or teenagers having health struggles, she keeps a Caring Bridge page, but her page is full of, oh man, it's just optimism, trust in God, Bible passage, and people from her work are, reading that, and that's another great witness opportunity. But anywho.
And praise God that she's in an emotional state or a healthy place here, and she's able to do that in crisis mode. That's cool.
Yeah. If there's anything else.
I mean, is that even a thing where somebody would offer to kind of update a Caring Bridge for somebody? Because that was kind of
you can do that.
Yeah, I would guess you can. That's worth looking into, how you can distribute responsibility without breaking HIPAA stuff. Yeah. Cool. Well, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to someone you've never met before about something that's very personal. So thank you for doing it. Thanks for all the love that you give to your kids, and the way that this love now will extend to these families and the people who want to serve these families, for us here in Seattle and for anybody else that has a chance to take a look at this and benefit from it. So
yeah, God's blessings on your ministry.
Yeah, appreciate it. You guys too. Have a happy new year.
Thank you. You too.
Say hi to Rick Gibson for me.
Oh, yes.
I had his niece in my church in South Carolina. So we got to see him around quite a bit. So
All right, well, thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
You
You
do.
too.